What is the SNBI? SNBI is the specifications for the National Bridge Inventory. It's a new document. Well, I'm just going to read the questions here, and then I'll go through them in more detail. So, what are our implementation dates? Why are we starting now, and how long will data entry take? I think those are the big questions that everybody has, and I'm going to try and answer here. So what is the SNBI? Like I said, specifications for the National Bridge Inventory. It's referenced in the new NBIS that came out in May of 22 and is replacing the old 1995 coding guide that we've been using for quite a few years. I mean, it started before 95, it was updated in 95, so it's been out since the early 70s. So that's completely going away now, and the new SNBI is going to be the guide that we'll follow. The new guide includes 75 of the old data items that were in the old coding guide, and then about 72 new data items that we'll have to enter for every bridge. The timeline for implementing this, we're starting the implementation, I think everybody's aware, April 1st here. All of the forms in SIMS have been updated to include the SNBI data. So on April 1st, those will go live and everybody can start inspecting with that, or everybody will have to start inspecting with the new data. In March of 25, next year's submittal, Federal Highway really isn't ready to accept the SNBI data yet. So we're still going to have to submit the old NBI data. And I'll discuss that a little bit as I'm doing the demo in SIMS. But that doesn't stop us from starting doing the SNBI inspections before March of next year. 2026 is really the year that we absolutely have to start inspecting with SNBI. In 2026, the March submittal will be SNBI data. That doesn't mean every bridge has to have SNBI data from an inspection at that point. We are going to translate all of our old data that we submitted this year actually into the SNBI. So those 74 items that are similar get translated over into the SNBI format. And then in 26, we submit the data. Federal Highway recognizes that all of our bridges will not be inspected with SNBI yet. So the data will just be partial for a lot of bridges, probably half of our bridges or more in 26. So that's fine. But by December 31st of 2027, every bridge has to be inspected with SNBI data. That's the drop dead date for getting every bridge inspected. So then in the 2028 submittal, every bridge should have full SNBI data included in it. And that's why I'm wanting to start early here, so we have time to get all of the bridges inspected. If we waited till 26, we just have those 2 years, and there's a lot of bridges that are on 48-month frequencies, and you'd have to inspect them early to get them done. So if we start here in April, you'll be able to get most of those 48-month inspections done within this time frame before the end of 27 without having to move them up in your schedules. So that's one of the main reasons I'm starting this early, and also work out bugs in SIMS and get things working really well by the end of 27. So if we started later than this, we may be scrambling to get things all up to date and working the way we want to. So it's just better to start early and get a head start on this, and that way everybody learns it and has a good handle on it here in the next few years. So that's the basic timeline for the implementation. So like I said, why start now? Starting sooner gives us time to work out the bugs in SIMS, like I said, 48-month inspections, and then it gives us time to enter the extra data that's needed in SIMS. there's a lot of new data that's needed, and it takes a lot of time to enter that. So if we start now, that gives us some time to get that done. So how long does it take to enter the data? Well, there's 147 to 154 new items. The difference between those two numbers is just that the elements. They want the element data for all bridges on the National Highway System included, but almost all of the secondary road bridges are not on the NHS, so they will not need that element data. So it's really just 147 items that the SNBI requires versus the 116 that the old coding guide required. But there is a many to one data format for some fields, so that 147 is a little misleading. Every bridge will actually have more than that because some data items require 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 or more entries for one item. So I'll show you that here too today as we go through that. So, but there's 38 items that are not inspection specific that can be added prior to an inspection being done. And we've created a special report to allow you to enter those 38 items in advance if you'd like to. You don't have to, but you can try and get ahead of the game by entering those things beforehand. And several of those are a many to one situation, which I'll show, like I said. There are 34 items that are completely new and won't be able to be collected until the bridge is inspected. They won't necessarily change at every inspection, but they'll have to be reviewed at every inspection to see if they change. So there are 34 items. Is quite a few new items to have to enter. So a typical bridge can take 2 to 4 hours to enter those new 38 items, the non-inspection items, because you have to pull up plans and look at plans and pull information off of that, and it just takes a little time. You got to look at the coding guide and see what codes you need to use, and it's just not a real quick process. So be aware of that extra time that's going to need to be taken. And then just for the extra 34 items, just for the field inspection may take you an extra hour to get that information and enter all that into SIMS as well. So you got a good, 3 to 5 hours maybe per bridge to get all this new information in there. The Federal Highway Administration is going to have a training session, a live training session. They're going to every state and doing some training on the new SNBI over the next few years. They're not going to get to Iowa, really in a good time frame to wait for that to happen before we start. Right now, they've got us scheduled for April of 25 to come to Iowa to do training. So because of that, I'm going to be maybe making some decisions on some things that I'm just going to make assumptions on, and may not be 100% correct on some things, but I don't think it'll be anything that's too catastrophic. So we'll start here anyway before they give us training. On the website there that I show, there is information on that website. The new SNBI guide is on that website, on that page, and then at the very bottom of the page there is a video where Federal Highway is made that goes through every item in the new coding guide and describes them and explains every item, which is helpful. I can't remember how long it is. It's probably 3-4 hour long video as well, going through the entire guide, every item. That takes some time. I can tell you that you can probably skip the first 45 minutes of the video, just skip over it, because they just talk about why we do inspections and why they change the coding guide and all that, and that's not anything that's really very helpful. So skip the first 45 minutes and then watch the rest of video if you have time. So there's the website, and I'll show you the website here in a little bit when I get done with my presentation here and show you where that stuff is exactly on that page. So, all right, now I'm going to go to the SIMS demo. I'm going to stop sharing this screen and go to a different screen. I'm going to go to the Federal Highways website. This is the website that I just told you about. The new coding guide is right here at the top. You download it here. It's a pretty significant sized document. It's a lot bigger than the old coding guide. They've got some examples in there that helps you show how to code some things. They've taken a whole bridge and shown you all the data for a particular bridge in the coding guide to help you as a reference. So it's not too bad that way, but there are a lot of changes compared to the old guide. So, and then down here at the very bottom, there's actually two recordings. They're both the same. There's really no difference in them. One says it's for, they did it on the June 29th, another one they did on June 28th. But just click on one of them and then it opens up the page, and then you have to put in this passcode. So copy the passcode and paste that into the window when you get prompted, and the video will start for you. So I recommend it. I really do recommend going through and watching that video. So all right, let me go to, I'm just going to go to the SIMS resource. Well, yeah, I'll go to the SIMS resources page later. I'm going to go to a bridge. I've just got a test bridge here. I'm going to start by just starting a new inspection report to show you kind of what that is. We've got this long list of reports in here. These are all going to go away April 1st. We're not going to break down the inspections like this anymore. The new SNBI just doesn't fit very well into making separate report types anymore. So it'll be a very short list come April 1st when you open this up. We're still going to have like the data update report, but then we're just going to have a state SNBI report and a LPA SNBI report. That's all we're going to have. And right now I've just got down here some options. These are the ones that you will see come April 1st. Well, the 38 one, item 1 will be in there as well. That's the one you can use to fill out information before you do an actual inspection. This is not an actual inspection. It's just a data entry report. So these will be the ones you will choose from. Just choose the LPA, and then you'll have the options here for the different inspection types. So if you need to do, an underwater with an NSTM. NSTM now is the new acronym for fracture critical. It's non-redundant steel tension member. They've changed it from fracture critical because fracture critical was such a scary term. They changed it to this. So whatever type of report you're doing, you check those, you hit create, and the new report will open up hopefully relatively quickly. So now you can see all the new SNBI pages. We've updated all the pages in here with SNBI information. There's a lot of them that are the same as before, and the ones with SNBI are ones that have new information on them. So I'm going to switch to one that I've already got open because I've got some data already entered in it to help us navigate it a little bit better. So I'm going to go to this one. So I've got this one open. All right, so we've got our inspection info page here, and I'm going to stress this a couple of times today. because we have to submit the old NBI data format next year, we still need to update some of that data for that submittal. And the most important thing to update for that submittal is the inspection dates. Inspection dates are critical. And I say that because we're going to have to enter inspection dates in two places, one for the old NBI and one for the new SNBI. And we're just going to do that for this year until the March of 25 submittal. And once that submittal's done, then we don't need to do the double entry anymore for the NBI. But the main thing to make sure is updated in the NBI and the SNBI are inspection dates. So we've got two inspection info pages here that have the inspection dates on them to be entered. So this is the same one you're used to. You come in here and you enter your inspection dates. You know, if you're doing, we still say fracture critical here, underwater, you know, we still have all that that needs to be entered. And then once you've got that one entered, now you got to go to the next inspection info page and enter data in these new fields that the SNBI is requiring now. Everything else in this page looks the same. There's no difference, but this area here for inspection dates is completely different now. And you can see I chose underwater, NSTM, and in-depth when I created the report. So those three things pop up. If you happen to forget one and need to add one, you come down here and check these boxes. Let's just say, okay, we're going to do scour monitoring too. It'll pop up that a fourth box there. If you uncheck it, it goes away. If you say, oh, I'm going to do a routine instead of an in-depth, you can do, oops, that's the wrong routine, this routine. Routine SNBI. So now we've got those three showing up. So you can add what you need, or if oh, I can't do it underwater because it's middle of January and the waterway's frozen, you can turn that one off. So, so when you come in here on the first inspection that you do in the SNBI, you'll have to put in inspection dates in three places. They want the beginning inspection date when you start your field work, but then they also want the completion date now of your inspection. So I don't know why they think they need that, but that's a new item that has to be entered. Normally it's going to be the same day that you begin. You know, a lot of times you can get a bridge inspected in one day, so it's going to be the same date. The Nationally Certified Bridge Inspector field is supposed to be a specific number for each team leader, and it's supposed to be the team leader's number in here, but we don't have that yet, and Federal Highway isn't worried about that at this point in time. So that's going to be something that will probably come later, and because I just don't know how they want to do that, because you know we have consultants that inspect for different states. So does that mean they have to have a different number in every state, or do they have a national number? Because there is no such thing as nationally certified. That's kind of a misnomer. That's not a real thing. You're certified by the state to do inspections through your qualifications. So that one can be left blank. Inspection interval, we've got that set up because to populate a number in there, it's editable, but there is new criteria in the National Bridge Inspection Standards that require some bridges to be on a 12-month inspection frequency, or an inspection frequency less than, like say, the underwater's at 60 months. There's criteria that requires that to be done on at least a 24-month cycle or less. So we've set up that criteria in SIMS. So when that criteria shows up in the rest of the documentation, you know, condition ratings and things that affect that, this number will change to whatever those requirements are. So if you change, say, the deck rating to 3 on a bridge, 3 then pushes the inspection cycle to 12 months. So the routine inspection frequency would automatically change to 12 months for you on that. We don't have one set up for 48-month frequency because that's not a required frequency. That's just an optional frequency. So the criteria has been set in the NBIS for the 48-month frequency as well. And it's actually less restrictive than the current criteria that we use, but we don't have any calculations set up for that at this point in time. But any bridge that you currently have on a 48-month inspection frequency will continue to be on a 48-month frequency. I don't think there's any criteria that would take one of your bridges off of a 48-month frequency if it's already on it. The criteria is more likely to add more bridges to the 48-month frequency than take them off. So right now, like I said, leave them on 48-month if they're already on 48-month. We will eventually have criteria that will check that just to verify that it qualifies for the 48-month frequency. But there's quite a few different items that have to be looked at to do that. So we don't have that just yet, but we do have the one implemented for the 12-month frequencies and the underwater frequencies less than 60 months. We do have that in there. So we have inspection due date. That at this time is not a calculated field. Am I right on that, Kevin? You'll have to populate that when the next inspection is due. So, your begin date up here that you've entered in, you'll go down here and you got a 24-month interval. So your next inspection then will be, in 26. So you have to enter that. Risk-based interval method. That one is one that they will all be method 1. Method 2 is shown in the NBIS, and you have to put together a committee. You have to go through all kinds of risk criteria to determine whether you can put a bridge on a 48-month frequency or 12-month frequency, and then it has to be approved by Federal Highway. And it's just not worth the effort to do method 2. At least I'm never gonna use method 2. Maybe somebody in the future may change their mind after I'm gone and use method 2, but I just don't see any benefit in using method 2 to determine your inspection intervals. It's just not something that we need to do. So method 1 is going to be it for everything. All of them will be method 1. There will be no method 2 for anything. So all of them can be method 1. Inspection quality control date. That's an interesting one. But that one, the way I'm going to use it for state bridges, all of my inspections get reviewed by my quality control team. So when they do their approval of a report, that will be the quality assurance date for me. So I see the same thing for you. You've got your inspection, it's awaiting approval, and when it gets approved by your program manager, that's the quality assurance date, and that's the date that should be entered here is the date that it's approved. Possibly that can be automated at some point in time, but right now that's a date that has to be entered manually. So before you approve the report, put in the date that you're going to approve it on. So if it was today, you're going to approve it, put in today's date, and then go to your approval, up here under your change workflow and approve the report. Inspection data update is the same to me is the same date. The date that it's finalized is the date that the data is updated into the database. The NBIS still requires all inspection data to be uploaded into the central database in 90 days after the inspection. So they're trying to get a way to check us on that to make sure data is getting put in the database in 90 days so they can, beat us over the head if we don't do it once in a while. If we go to 91 days, they can beat us over the head. So that's what that date is. So it most likely will be the same as your data quality control date. The quality assurance date, I guess I skipped that one, the quality assurance date. Now that's something that most bridges will have blank. Quality assurance is what Eric Serrata does when he comes out and reviews your inspection programs. That's quality assurance. So you will not have to enter any quality assurance date for any inspection. Eric will have to come in and put a date in there when he does that. So you'll only have whatever bridges, 10 bridges or so that Eric has reviewed. They will have dates in there for quality assurance, and you never have to, if there's a date in there, don't change it, just leave it. That's something that will be taken care of outside of your normal inspection. So, like I said, data update, a date is the date that you approve it, which would probably likely be the same date as your quality control date. Then they have inspection notes down here. I really don't know what that's necessarily for. Don't put all your inspection notes in here. That's not what it is. It's not. I found spalling on Pier 2. That's not what this is for. This note, I think, is better used for giving information to the inspector. If the inspector says, when inspecting this bridge, watch out for, I don't know, the bank is slippery, or make sure you take a ladder with you when you're doing this inspection. Some note like that helps the inspector. That's the only thing I can see putting in here. It's not. We've got other places to put notes about condition of the bridge, so that's just not what this is for. So use it however you best think it can be used. It's not something that has to have information in it. It's whatever you think is useful. And then they also have inspection equipment. I don't know why they want to know this either. It's really something that we're not going to use a lot. I'm not going to tell them that you had to use a ladder. I might say if you had to use a bucket lift vehicle, maybe that's good, or the underbridge inspection vehicle, that would be all right. You don't need to tell an inspector they need waders. Maybe you need to say, well, we used a boat, that would be all right. Then they've got snorkels and scuba and surface flight air, a video pole, that's just way over the top in information that we need to supply or worry about. So only to use the ones that are really important. Like I said, the trucks and maybe a boat. And they've got this one other down here. Well, what good does other do? That doesn't tell me anything. So other is kind of a useless piece of information. So then they've also got, ultrasonic, ground penetrating radar, impact echo, just all kinds of stuff here that, if you want to put it in, go ahead. I just don't see that it's really important to really fill every detail out here that you used on an inspection. Federal Highway will be mad at me for saying that, but I don't see the benefit of putting all this in there. And again, they have other types of testing methods, and it's like, how does that help you at all? So
And
they have
Scott,
no equipment. Yes, go ahead.
just to point out, maybe you're going to get to this, but it does allow you to select multiple options.
Yeah, I think you say if you do pick a ladder, you can pick a bucket truck, waders, whatever, and that's not that helpful either, because now it just says 3 items. I guess when you hover over it, it tells you what those 3 items are, but like I said, use it sparingly. I don't think it's that important. So I don't think there's anything else I want to say about these dates. Anybody have any questions? Any questions, Kevin, that have shown up?
The only question so far, and if we're going to answer the question, is for those who did miss it, yes, the PowerPoint presentation will be available in the next couple of days.
Yep, we'll put that out there with the recording of this.
That's the only question at this point.
Yep, okay, good. So when you come in here to do your first inspection with the SNBI, if you've got a bridge that has underwater or an NSTM that you're not doing at the same time, say you did an underwater, 2 years ago, make sure you put that date in there. Because if you don't put that date in there, you're not going to, the scheduler isn't going to work. We're going to need this SNBI data to schedule the next inspections. So make sure you fill out these old dates in here. If you're not doing, say, this underwater at the same time you're doing your routine, make sure those dates are populated, because otherwise it won't show up as needing to be done on the due date. You got to have a due date in there for that. You don't need to put in, this completion date and quality of control or anything like that at this time. That can wait until next time, but you've got to put in the beginning date and your due date for that inspection. So, like I said, inspection dates are extremely important when we start doing this SNBI. If we don't do anything else, make sure your inspection dates are right. That is the most important thing. So I think I've beaten that one to death pretty good. So I'm going to go to the next item here, the bridge data form. All the forms are very much the same as what they used to be. We've just incorporated the SNBI data in and entered it wherever we felt it fit the best. So a lot of items here, are the same as the old data. It's just a different number now. And the numbering system is this odd, the bridge name now, instead of item 8, it's B.ID.02. So that's your FHWA number is what that is now. So just a lot of things like that they're going to take a long time to get used to and remember what they are. The second, the ID kind of identifies that, okay, that's an ID value. And then we got over here, we've got a couple on my cursor, sorry for that flashing like that. The BSP is superstructure, another ID. Oh, that's the FHWA number, excuse me, FHWA number's over here. Bridge ID is the bridge ID that you use yourself. That's your special number that you've given to your bridge. The ID01 is the FHWA number, sorry about that. IE is inspection information, L is location, AP is an appraisal. So we've got a lot of things in there that are similar to what we had before, but have a new code number. Owner codes changed a lot. They're not similar at all. You can see county highway is actually L01 now instead of 2. So So you got B.CL.01 is the owner code, and L01 is the county code, and the cities have a different code from that. So latitude and longitude, L is again location. Now we've got year built, which is W, which is for work event. The tables are the same. We've got still your posting values. Your posting values are EP values now on the load rating form. Those will still be populated like they always were. Your actual posting values, if you have any, your advanced posting, all these things are the same, no change. And all this data will feed over from the old inspections. You won't have to re-enter any of this. This will all be populated automatically when from the old system. So, and down here we have the approach roadway alignment. That's changed a little bit. It's still required, but it's not the old. Is it 8 or 6 or 3? It's not a code anymore. It's just a good, fair, and poor. And in the coding guide, if you go up here to the little book, that's the coding guide. And when you click in that item, it takes you to the PDF of that page in the coding guide that talks about good, fair, and poor. It tells you that, okay, the format is alphanumeric 1, EI for frequency. I think that's, I'm not sure what EI stands for right now. And then the code BAP01, good, fair, and poor, and they give a little explanation here in the commentary. And then they give you some examples down here at the bottom of what good is. It has to do with operating speed as you're crossing the bridge. So you read those and it tells you whether it's good, fair, or poor for actually just the speed when you cross the bridge, if you have to slow down significantly or not when you cross the bridge. So that's kind of a handy feature there for all these items. So any item that has a new SNBI code, you click in the field and it'll show you here, and you can go right to the manual where that is. So
I got a couple of comments before we get off this page. Well,
yep.
There is some unfortunates with this particular page. As Scott was pointing out to some of those SPs, some of these do not have direct links to some of the other stuff you're, in the form, because some of these we haven't gotten to them yet, but many to ones. Yeah. And just the way they work, they do not have a direct correlation. So although it may have the same new SNBI number to it, don't let it necessarily fool you into thinking that it's going to auto-populate. So it's just because we don't have a choice. Now we have created so that you have the same drop down, but it doesn't have a direct link. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll show some of that too.
And then we do have a question that before we get too far. The question is, will inspection type still affect your ability to go from 24 to 48 months?
They don't really talk about inspection type. You will need a full inspection of the bridge before you can go to 48. So, but it's not as strict as what it was before. After you do an initial inspection, say a new bridge, you do your full initial inspection. And after that initial inspection, if it meets criteria for 48, it can go on a 48. There isn't that requirement, you've got to do a full in-depth inspection before you can put it on the 48-month frequency. The NBIS doesn't go to that detail anymore. That was something that Federal Highway made us do in the past. And that's why I say the new criteria isn't as strict as what our old criteria was for 48. So we're going to have a few more bridges go to 48 now than what were on the 48-month previously. But to offset that, they never had a requirement that forced us to go to 12 months in the past. they would recommend going to shorter frequencies, but now they have criteria that says you have to go to 12 months when certain things are met. And because of that, we're going to have more bridges on 12-month frequency than we had in the past. But there'll be enough in general. Not every county may see this, but in general, you'll have more bridges go on 48 that go on 12-month. So the number of inspections that you have to do every year shouldn't be affected by those changes. So like I said, in general, you may have, say, 3 bridges go on the 48-month for every 1 bridge that goes on the 12. That's what I see in the data. Like I said, every county may be different. You may not be that lucky, but in general, that's what you should see. So it won't cause you to have to do more inspections every year than what you have in the past. That's what I've seen when I look at the data so far. So hopefully that answers your question. All right, we've got this executive summary in here. We've always had this on our state bridges, but never really had it on locals, and it's not something that you have to use. It's just for your own use if you want to. We just go in and we put in a bridge description that just describes the bridge. It's 200 foot by 40 foot pre-stress girder bridge built in 1965, whatever. And then waterway, we'll say what kind of waterways under it. The roadway, US 20 going over the bridge. Substructure, it's integral abutment with steel piles. We just put that general information in here, and it's part of our report. So if you have to send this report to somebody, they can look here and get a really good idea of what the bridge is without having to dig into the report and look at every, the deck and sub and super and pictures and things to figure out what the bridge is. This just gives a good general overview of what the bridge is and where it's at. So it's something you can use if you want. If you don't want to use it, that's fine. You can turn it off under forms if you wanted to. You could go down here to forms and turn that page off. Just click it off here, and then it would go away. So it's not in the list anymore. So it's totally up to you whether you want to use it, but I just thought we'd make it available if you wanted to use it. All right, let me see. Executive summary, I'm going through my little handwritten agenda. I'm going to go to the deck page now. So you can see so far, there's a lot of new items in here for the SNBI. It's been a little bit of a challenge to figure out where to put everything. Kevin can attest to that. I've kind of driven him crazy moving things around and figuring out where to put things. But every item is in here at least twice. So you can, if you enter it in one place, it'll show up in another. So if you miss it on one page, it'll be on another page that you can enter it in. So, but some of the things that we were always keeping before are now part of the SNBI. So sidewalks, BG. G is geometry. So it doesn't want the rating, the condition rating that we've always put in here. What it wants is the width of the sidewalk, or not really a sidewalk. It's a curb is what they want. Sidewalk is what they're really looking for, but they want curb width. So put in whatever the width is of your curb. I would say if you've got a curb that's less than 6 inches wide, I'd put 0 in here, because they're just looking for things where people could walk on it. If your curb is less than 6 inches, I can't see why it would make any difference whether you put 0 or 0.2, so that's what this is for, and they want it for both the left and right side of the bridge. So maybe that one has it on one side, but not the other. railings, they want a condition rating for your barrier rail on the bridge now. So you have to code that, and it's just the same, 0 to 9. The definitions of these are pretty ambiguous. It's something you're just going to have to decide on your own as you're inspecting it. Do you have widespread minor and isolated moderate defects, or do you just have some minor defects? There's just no specific definition on what that means. So just use your best judgment. It's not the end of the world on this. Again, it's just something that they can beat us over the head if we have a bunch of them that say are condition state 4. They're going to say, well, you guys better do something about fixing those poor rails. And then transitions is the same thing. Transitions is just that, like it says, the transition between the barrier rail on the bridge and the guardrail, that attachment to the barrier rail, and then the attachment to the guardrail is what they're looking for here. And there's another thing that you're going to have to do with railings and transitions here too, that I'm going to talk about in a second, but both of them need some type of condition rating added here. So you may or may not have had these coded in the past, but now they have to be coded. Everything else here is just up to you whether you want to code it or not. The ones without the letter designation, they've also required us to rate joints. So again, we've got these very ambiguous conditions here to determine the condition of the joint. If you go into the manual over here, it will give you some examples. Here's the coding for those that it's talking about 0 through 9. Gives you a little commentary about the joints. Gives you some examples. Here's a joint, and they kind of describe it, and they say, well, they would code it as 6 for what they found on this joint. Another joint with some deterioration, but they still call it a 6. Another joint here with widespread moderate defects, they call it. So that one, they coded a 4 here. So just to help you out a little bit on coding those. So take advantage of this manual option over here for any of these new items that you're not sure about. Grab that and use it. Some of the other new things down here, this BH01 railing test level. They now want to know what crash test level your barrier rail meets. And then they also want it for transition as well. What crash level does the transition meet? So I talked to our methods people about this, and they did a great job putting a manual together, and I'll show you this here. Put this manual together to tell you what crash level you should put in here for your bridge. Let me see, I don't think the manual gives me everything I want here. No, this manual, I don't know, did this come from Bentley, Kevin, these manual connections?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to add that manual. I have not figured out how to do that yet.
Yeah,
but it should be on the website.
Yeah, it's on the website, but they've got a table 6 in here. They don't show the table 6. That's what I was wanting them to show, is this table 6. That's in the manual. That's like a page ahead of this page in the manual. I don't know why they didn't include that, but I'm going to show you the guide here. Let me pull this over. Can you see that? Am I showing the guide, Kevin?
I think so at this point, yes.
Okay, I just pulled it over. So hopefully you can see this guide. But the way it works, let's just pull it down here a little ways. All right, here is a rail type. And if you look right here, it says AASHTO BH01 code 892. That is the code that you would put in SIMS for this rail. So you don't have to do anything else other than find the rail in the manual here that fits your situation. So again, this one's, for one, it's S60. So I mean, there's a ton of different rails in here. There's every, type of little flimsy rail. There's a rail on a truss, another rail on a truss, just the W rail. You come over here and code it as I, or SYY is YY is the year, basically, that it was built. But I is probably good enough. And you can look at in the manual, it tells you what I means and what the S means. But for this rail, it's one of those two. But if you put I in there, that's going to be good enough. It's not something that's going to get scrutinized that hard. So here's our typical cached in place rail, or retrofit rail. So we've got that code here. Here's your post and rail system that's common out there. There's your code for that, 892. The different heights and sizes. So this one is 2302 is the code for this one. It's a little different than this one. So I'm going to go down. There's transitions. Here's transitions. For this transition here, I come over here and it's the BH002 code 3503. So if you ever find anything that you can't find in here that's missing, please let me know, and we'll get it added and figured out what to put in here. So, and this is on the SIMS page. Let me go here to resources. You come down, you go to your resources information page on the SIMS homepage, scroll down to the manuals section, and here's Bridge Rail Guide. That's that guide that I just showed you right here. And that's where it's at. So, and I'm currently in the process of updating the bridge inspection manual to include SNBI information. So that's in the works. Won't quite be done by April 1st, but it'll be done this spring as quick as we can. So, but here's the rail guide. I'm just showing you to get those, this information right here. So whatever it is, one that was 3502, and then I don't know, the barrier rail, or the transition, that's some other code. So that's where you find those two things. And once you put those in, they're not going to change unless you replace the rail or replace the transition, then they'd have to change. But in general, once you put them in there, they're probably not ever going to change. So, and then they've got this new one, irregular deck area. They've got a field that's the normal calculated deck area, but now they want to know that if your deck is an irregular shape. Normally, if you've got a bridge that's flared, that's the irregular shape that they're most commonly asking about. You've got a ramp coming on a bridge or something, and it's flared because of that. So that's a field that you have to calculate yourself to come up with. If your bridge is not irregular, if it's just a standard bridge width with no change, you can just leave this blank. It doesn't have to be filled out at all. And the coding guide will tell you that. Here again, irregular shape. It says bridges that carry, let's see, should say here, only report this item when the actual area is obtained from plans or measurement of bridges with irregular geometry. So if it's not irregular geometry, you don't need to enter that value. Complex feature, it's just a yes or no. A complex feature is mainly, our big specialty bridges. Our border bridges, a lot of those are complex, we'll call them, cable stayed, suspension, continuous truss, something like that. That's a complex feature. Most of your bridges, if not all of them, will not be complex. If you have a question about whether you think your bridge is complex or not, let me know and we'll look at it and we can make a determination, most likely that it's not complex. There's really nothing new or different you have to do in an inspection when it's complex. Federal Highway just wants to know that for some reason so they can scrutinize the inspection more. If it says it's complex, they're going to just scrutinize it more. So the complex feature, we're going to use that sparingly. We're not going to call many bridges complex. So, and then we still have this same deck condition rating here, same as before, 0 through 9. They might have changed these a little bit, but in general, they're the same. There's no real difference here. Condition state 4 still makes the bridge poor. So this is something that this value that you input here under this BC01 will not be part of the SNBI submittal in 25. So what you should do, we've included the old SINA in here that's called SINA updated, the old SINA form. This is the data that will be submitted in 2025. Is just this information that's on this page. So if you change the deck rating on this page, say, it says 6 here, but over here on the SNBI page, you see that, oops, wrong SNBI page. The SNBI page, that value did not translate over to here. So if you've changed it, this will translate from what it was previously in the old inspections. It won't be blank like that. But if you change it on this deck form, say, well, this time I think it's a 5. It went from a 6 to a 5. Okay. Well, on this form, it's still going to show 6 from the last inspection. So you should come in here and change this one to 5 as well, so they correlate. Besides the inspection date, that's the only other thing that needs to be changed on this form. If anything else changes, it really doesn't matter because it's going to get picked up in 26 during that submittal anyway. So as long as the inspection date's changed and these are updated, that's all that's needed. These condition ratings and the inspection dates. Everything else doesn't matter. It'll get updated in the future, no problem. But like this one says the superstructure is a 4. Say you did repairs and you fixed it. Well, on the SNBI superstructure page, if you change it to 5, it doesn't show up here, and that bridge is going to still show up as poor in the 2025 submittal. So it's really important to come in here and make sure you update these ratings along with the ratings for the SNBI just for this year. Next year's inspections, this will go away and you won't have to worry about it anymore. But because the Federal Highway is behind and they didn't get their submittal ready for SNBI data for 25, we've got to submit the old data. So kind of a hassle, but I think it's not that bad just doing these few things on the old form. So you can cuss me out for that if you want to, but I think it's more important to get started with the SNBI than to wait until after the submittal next year and put us a whole year behind getting the SNBI started. There's just too much to learn and do here to wait any longer. So if anything you take away from today, inspection dates have to be entered twice, condition ratings have to be entered twice, and that's it. Even all of the, yeah.
So along with that, as Scott was showing on the SIA, unfortunately, we're working through a bug The dates have to be filled in on the inspection info page. That's the only thing that isn't fillable right now on the SIA updated page. Just because there's a bug with selecting of routine and inspection. You have to select one in order to fill those for it to be turned on, so to speak.
Yeah. So all of this will just be carried over from the inspection info page.
Yep.
And filled out. That you don't have to fill this out here. You have to fill it out on the inspection info page, and it will come through here automatically.
Correct.
So the two places you have to do inspection dates are on the inspection info pages. Both of these pages need to be filled out. This will be auto-filled, but this down here will not be auto-populated. You have to actually come in here and change these manually.
Correct. And then we did have a question or maybe a clarification. Does our manual include anything related to wood rails?
The guide that I just showed you, yes.
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 Okay. I think there's maybe just a clarification on that topic since maybe they haven't gotten into it. I haven't looked, so I didn't know.
Yep. No, go ahead. You can look at that guardrail manual right now. Look at it. And if you can't find a rail that you know you have out there, let me know and we'll get it added. So, but there's a lot of different rail types in there. There is a ton of them in there. So I'm very pleased with our methods section and what they did to help us out, with that. It's amazing. So I don't know what we would have done without their help in doing that. It would have just been a nightmare to try and figure those all out one at a time as we go. So. All right, and this data isn't populated just because this is a test bridge. Once you come in here, all of this other information on this page will be populated from your old inspection. So yeah, I'm just using this test bridge. It doesn't have any information in it, but that way I can change things and don't affect a real bridge. So all right, superstructure. Again, we got all basically the same things that we've always had in here, but you'll see up here bearing devices. You have to rate your bearing devices now, where before it was just optional for you to come in here and put a rating in for your bearing devices, but now it's required for the SNBI. So that's the only one in this whole list that that is now a required SNBI field. Come down the page a little bit. We've added a couple new things. Curved bridge. They want to know now whether the bridge is curved or not. There's several options there. Curved girders. Steel girder bridge that's had the girders actually curved. Piecewise straight girders. We've got curved bridges that just have pre-stressed girders in there, and they're just offset at every pier to make the curve. So that's what this piecewise straight girders are. Kinked girders, I'm not sure we have too many of those, but if you've got, instead of a curved steel girder, you've got the girder kinks at the pier, but is still connected, maybe through some splice plates, the girders are connected together. So it's just kinked at the piers. That's what that one would be. So it's probably not going to be very often, but then most girders are not curved, so just put not curved in there. Once you put that in there, you're never going to have to change that. The other thing that they've added for condition rating now, they want a specific rating for the NSTM, aka fracture critical members of your bridge now. So you'll have a superstructure rate, overall superstructure rating, which is this value here, this BCO2. You have that overall rating for the entire superstructure, but now you also have to rate the fracture critical NSTM members separately, and this will play into their requirement because they have a requirement to do fracture critical inspections on 12-month frequencies if your condition of that NSTM bridge is a 4 or less. So your superstructure overall might be, say, 5, but you've got your fracture critical members that aren't in good a shape and maybe a 4, now that's going to force you to do a fracture critical inspection every 12 months. And I think if I go back to this page, because I changed that, hopefully we don't get too much of a slowdown here. All right, now let's see the NSTM. It changed to 12 months here in this field because I changed that NSTM rating to 4. It was 24 when we first came in here, when I created the report, but now it's 12 because I changed that NSTM. But the routine is still at 24 because the superstructure rating is still above a 3, so that's still 24. Now if I go in here, and I don't think this is possible too, I guess you could have your superstructure is a 3. Well, now when you go back to your inspection dates, now your routine is a 12. You have to put this on a 12-month frequency because your superstructure is a 3. And then you got to do your NSTMs at 12 months too. But if your NSTM were not a 4, there's a difference. See, the NSTM only has to drop to a 4 to be 12. Your superstructure has to drop to a 3 for the routine to be a 12. So if we go back to here and make this a 5 instead, now your routine is 12 because of the 3, but now your NSTM is back to 24. So so that's how we've got this set up to work with your different rating types to get to that 12-month frequency. We've got that set. That doesn't mean your routine has to be 12. You could do a special inspection and do that one. Do that one at 24 on the off years of doing your, whoops, is this gonna let me? Oh, Kevin, it's not letting me change that to 24. We'll have to look at that. It should be editable to change it to 24 and then just do a special in between. That's one option if this happens. So
we'll look at it and play with it.
Yep. I'm going to turn that special off. So back to the superstructure again. So that's how the ratings will work here. Down here, they want to specifically, here's where you say yes or no for fracture critical, which is, we always had to do that before, put yes or no. Now they want to know, does it have fatigue details? Just because it's fracture critical doesn't mean it has fatigue vulnerable details. So you have to put yes or no. I don't know why the question marks are in there, Kevin. It should be E prime is what that should be. I don't know why Bentley made those with question marks there, but it's just supposed to be E prime for these. I don't know if you can change that drop down or not, but so say no. Again, it's a one-time thing. Once you put that in there, you're probably not gonna have to change it. Here's that complex feature again. I've already said no to that on the previous page, so that's not too big a deal. I'm gonna go back to deck here a second. I forgot to go clear down to the bottom here on decks. In the new coding guide, they've kind of mashed superstructure and decks together in the items that they use, these SP superstructure items. They've made deck part of the superstructure. So we've got deck items here that need to be entered. These are things that are that one-time entry in those 38 items that I said could be entered before a bridge is inspected. These are part of that. And the way you do that, you hit add, and then you have drop downs here that you pick. So the structure type selection, you have your main structure. You may have approach spans that are different than your main span. You'll have to identify those separately. A culvert, you may have a culvert that has extensions. So you'll have to identify the main culvert and then create another item here. I'll show you that too for the extension. Or if your bridge has been widened, you need to have a widening. So I'm just going to go through this and show you this. So we have, this is the main span configuration. This is just something that in the manual it shows. It's main, and then the hashtags are just a number sequence. So if you've picked main, you put M, and then the number sequence is 01. And then for any additional items here, you just go to 2, 3, 4, however many you need. So in our main bridge, we'll say we've got 2 spans. They want number of beam lines. Material type has changed quite a bit from what material types were before. You've got a myriad of different material types now to choose from, a few more than what was in the past. This one, I'm just going to say it's pre-stressed girder, continuity. Is it simple span? Is it continuous? Is it continuous for live loads only? And that's how we design pre-stressed girders. If there's no joint at the pier, we've designed it simple span for the girders and continuous for live loads. But then there's other options here. I'll get into this frame and buried here in a minute, but for pre-stress, I'm just going to say it's continuous for live load, span type. Now they want to know, okay, it's pre-stressed girders. So I'm going to go down here to girders, I-beam, I-shaped adjacent, or I-shaped spread. I don't know the exact definitions of those, but adjacent, I'm just going to assume that means they're set right next to each other. And in most cases, we have spread girders, is what I'm going to call those. Protective system. This is one that's, you know, it's not something the inspectors are going to necessarily know. Are they going to know that there was an admixture added to the concrete mix that made those girders? They're not going to know that. For steel girders, you're going to know whether it's painted or not. Encasement, yeah, maybe you've encased some steel girders in concrete, something like that. Membrane, some of this applies to other things besides superstructure, but here's your uncoated weathering steel. So if it's weathering steel, you could pick that. So for pre-stressed girder, I'm just going to put none. There's no protective system on there. They want to know deck interaction, composite shored construction, composite unshored, integral or monolithic or non-composite. I think, you know, composite shored or unshored would be maybe more for concrete slabs, because a concrete slab is shored when you build it. Composite unshored, I'm not sure what the difference between that and this integral and monolithic is. That's one of those questions I'd want to ask Federal Highway. The coding guide doesn't really explain it in any way. You know, non-composite's obvious. You got a steel girder bridge that doesn't have shear studs on it. That's non-composite. But as far as like this pre-stressed girder, not sure which one I'd use, and it's not going to be the end of the world if you pick one over the other. It's not something that they're going to come back and look at plans and say, oh, you coded that one wrong. So just not that big a deal. Now deck material. Now they want to know that what kind of a deck you got. I got a cast in place deck, wearing surface. They got all the different wearing surfaces you could have. You know, here's our low slump concrete. Got polyester polymer there. You even got gravel, timber running planks with a steel deck. So on this bridge, I'm going to say I don't have any wearing surface. Deck protection here, again, the same, you know, admixtures. You put an admixture in your concrete, I don't know. A deck isn't going to get painted, so I don't know why that's there. Membranes, yeah, if you've got HMA on your decks, which we don't very often. And then patina weathering steel, well, you don't have a weathering steel deck. So most cases you're going to say no, none for deck protection. Reinforcing protection, we use epoxy coated bars a lot of time. You might use galvanized. I don't think you'd use metallized reinforcing bars. Stainless steel, clad or solid, FRP bars, or you got some sacrificial anodes in there. Most of the time it's just going to be your epoxy coated. Then they also want to know whether you use stay in place forms. We don't use stay in place forms very often, so most of the time that's going to be none. So now you've got the main spans entered. Well, okay, I've got approach spans. So I've got to add approach spans in here. That's going to be called AO2, I think. I don't think it needs to be AO1. I'm thinking AO2 is fine. Number of spans, I'm going to say I have 2. I just have 1 at each end of the bridge, let's say. I've got 2 single span slabs for approach spans, and then I've got my pre-stressed girder, 2 main spans. So I've got a 4-span bridge, basically, is what I'm saying here. I got 2 main spans and 2 approach spans. Number of girders, I'm going to say this is a slab. So slabs just have 1 beam line. Reinforced cast in place. I'm going to say it's simple span. Let's see, what is the girder type here? Slab solid or slab voided. So I'm going to say it's slab. Protective systems, again, I'm just going to say none. This is where I could put in composite shored construction for slab bridge. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know for sure. The deck type material, well, the deck and the superstructure are the same in this case, so they should both be the same. I've got wearing surface, I'm going to still say none. Deck protection, none again. I used epoxy bars in that too. And then no stay in place forms. All right.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
Before we get too far,
Yep.
This is there's a bit of a convergence of some questions here. So,
okay.
As it relates to the superstructure as well,
okay.
What is the process for a curved slab bridge?
Would
we have
not
to
really
do anything?
Not anything different. You've got to put. Let's see. Where's my curved girder?
On the superstructure.
Is that on? Oh yeah, I'm on the deck tab, aren't I? On the superstructure
Yes.
page. If it's a slab, all you do, curved slab, you'd put curved girders in there. That's nothing special there. And then there's nothing different to add than down here either for that. There's nothing in there to identify that it's curved, just that one spot. So, it's all going to be the same basically. So hopefully that answers your question for that, but nothing too crazy there. Now I'm going to go through culvert stuff too, so I'm just going to hit culverts right here. Culverts are handled a little bit differently than they were in the past. You have to have a superstructure and deck information for a culvert, just like a regular bridge. You'll see in a minute too, for substructure, we're going to have substructure items for culverts as well. So culverts they've just made them way more complicated than they need to be. But I'm going to show you that here now. I'm just going to add another item. I think I got to move over to the right. There's a little scroll bar here at the bottom to move over to the right to add more than the 2. So now I'm going to say culvert. I'm going to say CO3 and number of spans. This is how many barrels your culvert has in it. So if you've got a 2-barrel culvert, you have 2 spans, and the number of beam lines is the same as a slab bridge. You just have 1. So material type, you might have cast in place, or maybe you'll have precast. Maybe you'll have precast culvert. Span continuity. for a 2-barrel, we'll say continuous. We normally build them continuous. Well, I said it was precast, didn't I? So maybe I won't do continuous. I'll do simple span because it's a precast. Again, down here, you just call it a slab. There is no culvert, so we'll just call it a slab type span. No admixtures. Oops. Deck interaction. Since it's precast, we can either say it's this integral monolithic. I don't know what the big difference is. Material type again, precast for the deck, superstructure deck, same thing. It's like a slab bridge. Wearing surface, none. Deck protection again, none. Still used epoxy coated bars and no stay in place forms. So now we've got that culvert section. All right. Well, let's say we've got oops. No, I don't want to delete. You've got an extension or a widening of a bridge. In the manual, it says you only have to add the information for the extension or call it an extension or a widening if the type of structure is dissimilar from the original structure. So for a culvert, you put an extension on. It's still, we have a precast boxes. We still use precast boxes for the extension. You don't have to add the culvert extension as an option here because it's the same. Because in this data, you're not, what would you say is, what would change? Everything would be exactly the same for the extension as for the main structure. So you don't need to add a culvert extension. And the same thing for the widening. If you widen the bridge, you've got steel girder bridge, you widen it with steel girders, you don't need to change and add a widening here. You would maybe have to go back and change the number of beam lines. Say you added 2 more beam lines, you might have to change that. But if it's the same, you know, this one's pre-stressed girders, everything's the same, you know, why add a widening if it's the same structure type? It's only if you've got a different type of extension or widened section that you would need to change it. So we got pre-stressed girders, what we said is the main structure, we widen it, we put steel girders in. Well, now you have to put a widening in and add those girders in. So you would leave, you know, the main girders, you had 5 pre-stressed girder lines. Now in the widening, you've got 2 potential, you know, 2 beam lines that are steel, something like that. So, so here we have W4, number of spans. We still have the same number of spans, but now we've got steel welded girders for the widening. So that's the only time you'd add widening or extensions is when it's different than what the original structure was. So I won't go through all those. That's not worth it. But now we've got all of these items here on the deck page that can be filled out. We go to the superstructure page and go to the bottom there. We've got the same fields, and they've just been duplicated now in this area. And I just put them on same things on both pages because the deck and super are kind of combined here. So I just put everything on both pages. So that way it doesn't matter what page you're on, you can always go down here and look at this information and get familiar with whatever you want to see. So it's more for convenience than anything else. So it doesn't matter which page you put it on. You could have entered all that in the superstructure page here and change that. I could go over here to this widening, see, and change that and change that to it's continuous for both spans in this case versus what the pre-stress was. So that'll just carry over to the other page as well. So So that's how this works. Any questions on that at this point?
Yes, there's some questions, Scott.
Okay, let's
just
go
in
ahead.
general.
Mhm.
So there's some questions about shored. I'll do my
Mhm.
best to kind of relate these. I don't know if you want to
Okay.
look at the chat. I'm looking at the one from 10:18 this morning. I don't know if you want to address that one.
I'm trying, my big arrow here isn't working very good for me to scroll down on things. I can't get to them, sorry.
Okay.
My pointer
So
isn't working.
maybe it's a comment. I would think
Okay.
shored composite construction would be much more rare than unshored, so I would code that later if lack of proof. I don't know if that's more of a comment or a question.
Yeah, like I said, most bridges are unshored. I think when you build a slab bridge, that's shored. You're putting up shoring, to hold that in place until it's cured. I think that's what that is talking about. Why they need to know that, I have no idea. And again, if you code it one way and it's really truly another, they're never going to know that anyway. It's not a critical thing. And one other thing I want to mention here too, all these items don't necessarily have to be populated at your first inspection here coming up, this year or next year. They have to be populated by the end of 27. They have to be in by then. I recommend you populate them now during your first SNBI inspection. Get it done. This is a one-time entry stuff, and you won't have to think about it again. But in our submittal for 25, none of this is going to be submitted. So it's not critical that this be entered in at your next inspection. I just highly recommend it, because you don't want to get to 27 and then, oh yeah, I haven't entered any of that data yet. I've got to go in and enter all that data. I think that would be just a big hardship on you to do that. So I recommend doing all this now, but it doesn't have to be. When you approve a report, this SNBI report, it's not going to check to see that these are populated. So if they're not populated, you're still going to be able to approve the report. But I just think it would be a mistake if you didn't enter this stuff at your next inspection and get it in there, because you're going to have to do it sometime anyway. But it's not going to stop the approval process at this point.
Okay.
Any
The next
questions?
well, I'd say this is more of a clarification.
Mm-hmm.
When you were going through, it looked like maybe you had two main spans, and there was a question that there should have been maybe two approaches. I mean, you're just showing
Yes.
a general example of how each one
Yes.
of these works.
Right. I have two main spans because I'm saying I have pre-stressed girders, and say the two center spans are pre-stressed girders. So I got two spans. Now I've got approach spans that are slabs, and I've got two of those, one on each end. They're not continuous. That's why I've said they're simple span. So my entire bridge has 4 spans total, basically, because of this. So that's how this is working. You're just telling how many spans you have of this girder type and this deck type.
So you would not have additional unless you change your type, your material type.
Right. Yes. Yes. If
So it works much like
if I had a
what you
4
did in
span
the
bridge and it was
past.
all pre-stressed girders, I'd have a 4 in here, and I would not have approach spans. I only have approach spans because it's a different type. Most bridges you have are going to have a main span or a main structure type, and that's it. It's all pre-stressed girders. It's all a slab. It's all steel girders. The whole bridge is the same, so you'll only have one input here. You only have additional inputs if you have a different structure type altogether. That's why I say even widening, you don't have a widening if the structure type is the same. So you may have your main bridge is a 4-span steel girder bridge. So you've got 4 spans in here, 5 girders, all steel. You widen it, all steel. All you're going to do is come in here to this one and change it to, 5, 6, 7 girder lines, however many you have now with your widening. And you don't have to put a widening in there. So, little confusing, yes. Go into the coding guide and it'll show you all of these different items. This is just beam lines. So it tells you that that a slab only has one beam line. An arch bridge with masonry spandrel walls is just one beam line. So go into the coding guide and it'll help explain some of this in more detail as well. So. But again, when you're first entering this, don't hesitate to give Kevin or I a call, and we'll help walk you through what it needs to be. So
as best we can.
As best we can. Like I said, without it, Federal Highways training, some of these things, I'm just taking my best shot at what things should be. So I could be wrong, but in some of these things, if I'm wrong, it's really not the end of the world. So I think I want to take a quick break here, let everybody get something to drink, go to the restroom. Let's come back at, I got quite a bit to go through yet, so this next hour and a half is going to go pretty quick. Let's just try 10 minutes if we can. I'll be back at 10:43, so I just want to give you a chance to stretch a little bit. All right, come back. I scrolled down in the chat and saw some questions there, so I'm going to go back a little bit and answer those questions. One thing I want to correct here, and thanks for bringing this up because I'm going too fast here on some things, but on a culvert, under the span continuity, there are options for a frame or buried structure. So for a typical box culvert, that would be a frame structure. Buried structure typically would be, your corrugated metal pipes, something like that is a buried structure. But our typical box culvert is going to be a frame structure. So thanks for bringing that up. I missed that in here. So next question was about timber stringers with different span lengths and different number of beam lines. Span lengths don't matter at this point. They don't ask for the span length of every span. They're only asking for beam line, number of beams in the structure. So you can put multiple main spans. If you've got a bridge that you've got different number of beam lines in a span, but even though the material type is the same, they're all timber stringers, whatnot, you would just go in and have another main span, and you'd call that M02. You put in however many spans that was. You had 2 spans that had 5 girders, and then you've got 2 spans that have 7 girders, something like that. So, and it can be anything. It can be steel or whatever it is. Whatever, it can be the same type. So the span types are the same, but you've got different number of beam lines, so you'd have to put 2 different entries in for those. Say you got a 3-span bridge, and each span has a different number of beams in them. You're gonna have to put 3 main span types in here to cover that. So, another question. I'm going to go back to curved girder as well. The question about slab curved girders. I guess I should have been more clear on that a little bit. A curved slab bridge would you just use the curved girder option for a curved slab. There isn't really anything in there that fits. These other 2 don't fit, and it is curved, so you can't say not curved. So it's a curved girder because down here in beam lines for a slab, you put 1 girder line. So it is a girder basically. So that's good to catch me on that. Steel girders with encased exterior beams or exterior channels. So that's a question that I think I'd like to ask Federal Highway. Let's see, what are the different types of? Oh yeah, and let me go back to a culvert here too. Span type. We should put in, if it's a culvert with 3 sides, no bottom, it would be a 3-sided. If it's a typical concrete box that's got a bottom, that's 4-sided. So I screwed up culverts a little bit here in the continuity and the type. There are specific options there that fit for a culvert. So culverts are confusing. I said at the beginning that they're just different to code here in this new system. So I have to really watch that. So encased steel girders or channels. I don't know that they've got anything that really says they're encased. I don't see anything that gives me a way to input steel girders that are encased in concrete other than Protective system. Yeah, there's encased concrete. So you can't really define that it's just the exteriors that are encased, or but you can use that if you want to. So you can identify those structures yourself if you ever want to do a query of how many bridges do I have that have encasements on girders. If you put encasement here, you'll be able to query that. So again, Federal Highway is not going to come out and say, oh, well, it's only the exterior that encased. The main girders are not encased, so you shouldn't have used that. They're not going to do that. So use this to your advantage. Don't worry that Federal Highway is going to think you did it wrong necessarily. Use it to your advantage and how you want your data to be displayed. So use the protective system for an encasement of a girder. So good questions. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. Is there one more? Yeah, I'm going to get to the it says if it's an RCB culvert, does it have to be put in superstructure? The coding does not. You will not have a component type for a superstructure, but let me go to the culvert page. I'll skip over the substructure page right now. I'm going to go to culverts just to answer this culvert question. If you have just a culvert, your deck super and sub pages, all you're going to have on those is for coding, you're going to have no. And you can see here I have no, but if it is a culvert, I'd put that. And on the culvert page, you have all the super and deck information, and you have the substructure information on the culvert page. So you don't need to go to the deck super sub to enter any of that. You just go directly to the culvert page, go down to the bottom, and it fills everything out. So you can see these are already filled out from what I did on the other pages. But with the culvert, you come here and fill everything out for both of the deck, super, and sub is all taken care of on the culvert page. So you only need to have the deck and super pages for a culvert, so you can put no in here. You still have to put no in there for deck, super, and sub for all these. So that's how I say it's hard to separate all these into separate report types and keep everything working the way it should. So I'll get to the culvert page here and maybe go through culvert again, just because it is so confusing. I'm going to go to the substructure page here next. And I'm going to try to get.
There was a comment about deck thickness for allowing wear. Do you want to? That's something.
Yeah, that's a built-in wearing surface, and that's up to you whether you want to keep track of that or not, because every bridge would have it then, and so it's it loses its meaning if you say it has a wearing surface that's built in, that integral wearing surface. I wouldn't put that down as a wearing surface in the data. I would keep the wearing surface for a surface that you applied after the fact, not a built-in wearing surface. No, I would not do that. Substructure page, there's not as much on the substructure page that has changed. Everything else is pretty much the same. There's nothing here in this upper part that's SNBI related. There is an underwater condition rating now that's required. You have to code the underwater condition. Again, this is one that's so ambiguous. I don't know how you decide what rating to make this one. Because it will depend a little bit on whether you have scour too. And I take that back. Let me go to the guide. What does the guide say? If in doubt, go to the guide. Okay, it says report the condition of the underwater members of the substructure based on underwater inspection. So if you've got a bridge that needs an underwater inspection, then you have to code the condition of your substructure that's underwater. So if your bridge does not have an underwater inspection required, you do not need to code this item, and it can be left, like it says, is N for not required. So this is just coding that portion of the substructure that's underwater. Now, we've really never had any part of the substructure underwater that's really any different condition than above water. But if you've got timber piles or some steel piles that are exposed, that are underwater, that have to have an underwater inspection, you might have something, a different code here than the rest of the substructure. So that's another one that has to be coded separate from your overall substructure rating. So maybe your overall it's 7, but the underwater portion is a 6. So also on this, and this is where you designate what type of underwater inspection is needed, whether it's diving, wading, or no underwater inspection is needed. That would also be here, no underwater inspection required. So you've got the type, how did you do the underwater inspection, if you did one, and then do you need an underwater inspection, yes or no. So a couple other ones that are interesting here that they're asking for: overtopping likelihood. This is another one that, inspectors aren't necessarily going to know this. This is something from history over time that you're going to know whether this bridge gets overtopped and what the likelihood of it is. And again, it's something that you just have to have local knowledge to determine. So this one, all I can tell you is do the best you can on it, and pick what you think is most likely. Maybe it's never been overtopped, so maybe never is your answer. Maximum bridge height. This one's one that just is comical to me. I just don't have any idea. I can't answer why this value is needed for any reason whatsoever. I'm going to show you the coding guide here and what this is. Let me zoom in here. It's the distance from the top of the deck to the top of the water, the maximum, or at top of the deck to your pavement surface, whichever one you have under the bridge. This shows both, but the water is the deeper dimension, so that's the one you have to enter. It's not this dimension over here because the bridge is on a little slope there. So this dimension is the greatest maximum height to the water surface. I can't tell you what that's for. And up here, what does it say? This item can be estimated in the field by field observation if it is more than 30 feet. This item does not need to be updated due to fluctuations in water surface. So I don't know what that means either. Are they just saying you don't have to change it every time the stream moves every week? Or does it mean I don't have to change it every time I inspect the bridge just because the water depth changed at my inspection? I don't know, because it says use the water surface elevation at the time the value for this item is established. So I don't know. Measure it once, put it in, and then don't worry about it again is what I'm saying, because I don't know what it's used for. I have no idea what the purpose of this is. Because if you have a navigable waterway, we have other fields that you have to put in a vertical clearance for a navigable waterway. So that doesn't help, navigation at all, having this. It just is kind of baffling to me. I don't get it. So So put a value in, it says to the nearest foot, rounded to the nearest foot, so it's not even that accurate. So in this case, you'd put 27 in, like it says here, 27. So that's what that one is, and I'm baffled by it. So don't expect a clear answer on that one, I don't think. Now we'll go down to the substructure items, SB, the B.SB or substructure items. So now every bridge will have at least one. If you have a multi-span bridge, you're going to have at least 2 entries here. So your type, you've got abutments, piers, and widenings again. So if your substructure has been widened, you may have to enter a widening. But for abutment, again, we have A01 as our item number, item designation. Number of substructure units. If both of your abutments are the same type, you can just put 2. If your abutments types are different, you have to put each one in separately. So I'm just going to say in this case that my abutments are both the same. They're both going to be cast in place concrete. Now they've got different types of abutments here: cantilever wall, stub, open spill through, integral, semi-integral, gravity, counterfort, pile bents, cribs, cellular, reinforced earth, abutment footing only, and abutment other. And then down here, the other ones are for piers. Basically, B is for the different piers. Excuse me, and P is also for piers. So I'm just going to say in this case that I have integral abutment. I'm going to give you an example of footing only. If you have a slab bridge, you may have that slab sitting on a footing, and then you don't have a paving notch or anything. You've just got gravel up to the end of your bridge, no real joint there or anything, and your slab is just sitting on the footing. That's what an abutment footing only is. You don't have any back wall, you don't have anything else there behind that slab. So I would call slab bridge in that case footing only. You might have a slab bridge that has kind of an integral back wall with a paving notch on it because you've got asphalt coming up that needs to sit on a paving notch, or maybe concrete to sit on a paving notch. You know, that's typically an integral. There's some that might be semi-integral if they're not directly connected to that the back wall of that slab. So there's many different types that are possible there. I'm just going to say integral for this one I'm doing. Again, here's all this protection types, you know, abutment protections. I don't know if there's any real abutment protections. You might have sprayed a sealer on the bridge seat or something. You could say that for some bridges, but I'm going to say none. Foundation type, you know, are you on footing on rock? Are you got piles? You have drilled shafts. So I'm just going to say H pile is most common. Foundation protection, again, you know, most of them don't have any protection system necessarily. You know, maybe you have treated timber if you got a timber abutment, but most cases I'm going to say no. So there's your abutments. Now, if you've got multi-span, now you've got to do the pier. Same thing with piers. Here I'm going to say 2, and say I'm a 3-span, so I'm going to have 2 piers. And again, what type of piers do you have? masonry, steel, rolled, timber. I'm going to say I've got just cast in place. I've just got our standard T-pier or something. It's in a stream. Now I'll go down here to find, bents. We've had some confusion about what's a bent and what's a multi-column pier. I think in the guidance, a multi-column pier is one where all the columns share the same footing versus a bent column bent, where each column has its own footing. I'm not sure I like that very well. When I think of a bent, usually it's where we have driven piles, individual piles that are the columns themselves and go right into the cap. So I think that is a column bent. For my bridges, if I have, say, a 3-column round column cast in place pier, even though each pier is on its own footing, I'm going to call it this pier multi-column, just so when I query the data, I understand what I'm getting. And then I'm going to use bents for when I have each column is actually the maybe encased pile, or it's a steel pile, or it's a pre-stressed P10A pile type thing. That's when I'm going to call it a bent. So, and then there's different ones with web walls. If it's a pier wall, that's up for debate too on when something is a pier wall and when it's just encased. But that's kind of up to your discretion. There's no right or wrong here on some of these. We have encased bents, but that's not really, this has a web wall. I'd rather call it encased than a web wall, but it's just what, if you were querying your data and wanted to know what you have for a certain type of pier, call it what you want that works best for you, whatever makes sense for you. Same way with abutments, whatever abutment type you want to use for a certain type of abutment. You have some bridges that have a unique abutment type. Use whatever you think is most appropriate. Nobody's gonna throw you under the bus for picking something different than somebody else did. So a pier single column, you can debate whether a T-pier is a single column or a wall. You can call them either one, I think. It's probably more of a wall than a single column. You've seen single column bridges, where they have just one massive round column versus our T-piers, which have that long, narrow column. It's more like a wall. So I might call them a wall instead of a single column. Protective systems again, if you've got a P10A that has encased steel piles, maybe you want to say it's encased in concrete, possibly. Foundation type on rock, or you just H-pile, and protective system. Again, I'm just going to say none. So if you have, like I said, a multi-span bridge, you're going to have an abutment and a pier item for substructure. You can see they had widening too. That same goes for widenings of substructures. If the new widening is a similar type from what the original was, you don't have to put the widening in there. If the type is different from the original, then you do have to put widening in. So, and I think that the same would go for an abutment if the abutment is widened too. But most of the time when you widen an abutment, everything's pretty much the same type, but a pier might be a little different. So
Scott, we have some
any
questions.
questions? Sure.
Yeah. How would you code a bridge with a timber abutment that had a steel pile bent installed in front of the existing abutment?
You know, I'm not sure what they're going for there. If the old abutment was still being used, or was it abandoned by installing the steel pile in front? But again, I think that's up to your discretion how you want to describe it. What best describes it to you for your use? I try to think of this as how would I use this data, not how the feds are going to use the data. Just make your best estimate on how you want to code some of this stuff, because there's unique things out there that just don't fit into every category that's on here. So just do your best to make it fit for your needs. That's the way I'm approaching it. Any other questions?
Not so much a question, but maybe a comment / clarification from our side is the Wisconsin DOT defined piers and bents as followed. Piers only have one footing at each substructure unit,
Right.
and bents
Yes.
have several. So,
right. That's what I was just saying. Yes, correct. But I don't necessarily agree with that, because when you go to query your bents, how many bents piers do I have? You're going to get, like I said, we've got our round column substructures. Say we got 3 round columns under a pier cap, and each one is on its own footing. I don't want to call that a bent. I want to call that multiple columns. So when I query the data, I know that I'm not mixing a couple different things together. I don't have a P10As in with my other pier types. Right or wrong, I want to use the data set it up for my purposes, not what federal highways definitions are, because they don't know. They're people who have never inspected a bridge. They have no clue, what some of this stuff is. So I want to use it for my benefit, not theirs. So any other question?
Maybe it's a follow-up to the timber. The old abutment still holds the back wall.
Yeah, so I would code that old back wall to whatever type it was as well. Like I said, you just do what you think is best for your situation. Because every code in here is not going to fit necessarily every possible scenario that's out there. So anything else?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Substructure. I'm going to go to the culvert page. Again, on the culvert page, we really don't have any new SNBI items that fit our old information we have up here. We just have the condition rating like we've always had. We've kept in there, culvert with fill or no fill. Sometimes it's good to know that whether your culvert has fill or not. And you can see all the superstructure and substructure information has appeared here on the culvert page as well. So if I did, if this had been just a culvert, I wouldn't, have. Well, I take that back. For a culvert, all of this is different. So I hit the trash can there and I just deleted that extra column I had. So for a culvert now, in the substructure area, I think the superstructure area, I talked about that, and you can figure out how to do the superstructure and deck items for a culvert. But now for the substructure for a culvert, now they want information pertaining to a culvert, and every culvert will have an abutment. If it's a multi-barrel culvert, it's going to have piers. So the interior walls of a box culvert are considered piers, and the exterior walls of a box culvert are considered abutments. So now you have to go in and say, okay, we've got two substructure units, you got a wall on each side. Again, it's reinforced concrete. I'm going to scroll down to make sure I didn't miss anything else. So reinforced, we'll call this cast in place. Abutment type, I'm thinking, it's not piers or anything. It is a cantilever wall is what the abutment for on a slab. That's what the wall is on abutment. Protection, still none. It does not have a piling. It's either going to be, possibly on rock, maybe not very often, or not on rock, on reinforced earth or reinforced earth. So those three, I don't know what the difference is. Footing on reinforced earth, footing not on rock. I don't know what the difference is there. I would say most of them are going to be, if your culvert has a bottom, it's a footing on reinforced earth. It's not on piling. It's not drilled shafts. Reinforced earth. If you've got a culvert that does not have a bottom, it might be sitting on something else, probably not pile. You could maybe say that's reinforced earth. I don't know. Again, use your best judgment on that. And then protection again, none. Now piers, I've got a triple barrel culvert, so I've got two pier walls. Now the question came up, what if you've got cast in place barrels, and you've got a triple barrel, and you've got just these cast in place units up against each other? Are those two separate piers, or is that one pier? And I'm calling them one pier, because otherwise you're going to have how many substructure units there for piers, and it's going to be confusing. I've got a 3-barrel culvert, and I've got 2, 4, 6, or 4 piers in a 3-barrel culvert. That it just doesn't make sense. So for a cast in place situation, the two walls that are adjacent to each other, consider them as one pier, because they do get bolted together, and usually they get some type of fill in between or grout in between. So they're one pier is the way I would designate them. So okay, reinforced. It's a pier wall. I'm going to call this a wall. And I'm going to say none for protective system. Come on. And those walls are also just on reinforced earth, and then none for the protective system. So most culverts that are bridge sized are going to have multiple barrels. So you're going to have an abutment item and a pier item for most culverts. So this is where that many to one thing, where I said we had 147 items. Well, SB 01 is one item, but now it's got 2 entries. So now you got 2 SB 01s. So the number of items you have for any bridge, isn't going to be the same most of the time. You're going to have quite a variety of data to enter. So totally depends on what kind of structure you have. Let me go to channel protection. There's some new items there. They've added several new ratings for channels and channel protection. You have to rate the scour, which is something we had before, but now they've given, definitions for the codes, and they're very ambiguous. I don't know what minor scour is versus insignificant moderate scour versus widespread minor scour with isolated moderate scour. These are definitely things that are just going to have to be up to your discretion. I've got our hydraulics people thinking about this, and if there's any way they can help us out and define some of these things a little bit better, I may have some guidance on this later on. But for now, you're just going to have to use your best judgment on what you think the scour channel rating should be. Same way with channel protection. The same, definitions, minor defects, widespread minor defects. So what do your banks on your channel look like, upstream and downstream? Use your best judgment on that. Channel condition rating. Now you rate the channel itself. That's different than the channel protection. What you've got on your banks. This is more, is your channel moving? Is it meandering? Is it getting deeper? That's what this rating is for. So again, no real clear guidance on that. Just got to use your best judgment. We still have, it used to be called scour classification. Now it's scour vulnerability classification. And it's no longer, 1, 2, 3, 4 coding. It's A, B, C, D, and E, and U for unknown foundations. U still for unknown. E, scour appraisal has not been completed, up to scour appraisal completed, bridges determined to be stable. So that's the new code for that. I still have underwater inspection here, whether it's yes or no. That's on the other page, and that's why it's already populated. We may think about whether we need to have that on this page or not. We may just leave it on the substructure page and be done with it. We still have the ABC levels of analysis that need to be checked and upload a PDF of those. Plan of action still is required, but now it's a SNBI item. So now they want to know whether you've got a plan of action. 0 is not required, A is required but not implemented, and yes is required and implemented. So that's a new one that has to be entered in here for the channel. We still have the unknown foundation, A and B. Unknown foundation risk level is the same. Underwater inspection type, that's from that previous page as well. We probably maybe don't need that on this page. We'll just leave it on the substructure page. But for now, it's on this page as well. And we've got the overtopping on here as well, and maximum bridge height. So these three may or may not stay on this page. It just depends. They probably fit better. I don't know. Whether they fit better on this page or not, but because the bridge height doesn't necessarily, it means even if you're over pavement. So we'll see about whether we leave these here or not, but they're here for now. Channel bed measurements, that hasn't changed. That's the same as it was before. SINA, we really don't have an SINA the way you think of an SINA anymore, because there's so many items, the 147 items, plus you've got the many to one on some items. It's really difficult to just come up with an SINA on its own. I'll talk about report fields here in a second too, but on the SNBI SINA page, we just listed all 147 items. They're all on here. So you can go through here and just verify that you've entered everything. Here's where all the condition ratings, I've just entered these that help determine the frequency interval of different inspections. These are just coming from the other pages that we've already coded. If you've coded these on another page, it just populates this form. Like you can see here is all the superstructure and substructure stuff we entered today. That's all pulled over. The other many to one items here are features. And I'm not going to go through all these. This is too much. And most of these are going to get pulled from our central database anyway. You're not going to have to enter these yourself. There's only a couple of them that you have to enter separately. Everything else will pull over. They want some new railroad information now. If you're over a railroad, they want to know the railroad service type. Clearance, we've measured that before. Horizontal clearances, we've measured that before. Navigational waterway, we've done all that before. That's not new, and we'll pull over from whatever we had in the past. Load rating information is here. I'll show the load rating form in a minute and how that's changed. Several new things on the load ratings that have to be entered. I'll show that too. Postings information, work events. That's the one I want to show down here right now. They want to know now every time you do a project on a bridge, what you did and what year you did it in. And this doesn't even necessarily mean contract work. This can be just work that your own maintenance forces did. So, the year built will come in automatically. That'll just be in there. But if you've done some work, say in 2023, they have a whole list of different work items you can choose from here. The very first one, bridge replaced, I don't know what, that doesn't make any sense to me why that one's in here. Just, if the bridge was replaced, this isn't the bridge you should be inspecting. You should be replacing or inspecting the new bridge. So what does that mean? I don't know. Just one of those crazy things that they've added in here that doesn't make sense. So you got all kinds of deck things, major and minor rehabilitation. You can determine what you think minor and what major is. Overlays, superstructure replaced, sealed, coated, substructure replaced, culvert, bearings repaired, joints installed, replaced, joints repaired, scour countermeasures installed, channel protection installed. So even if you did this channel protection, say you did channel type protection repair yourself, you're still supposed to put that in here. And then you can do multiple at the same time. You can put in multiple items. Oh, that's funky there. So there's 3 items in there. When you hover over it, it tells you what 3 there are in that 1 year. So every time you do a new one, you did something in 2024, I don't know, replace the deck in 2024. You put all those in. So that's something now that they want to track. I showed you the old SINA is still there. Here's the features page. It's just the features. I want to show you this. This is one we'll keep this one in here for the next couple of years, just for reference. It compares which old items match with the new items. All of these items in the top here are going away. None of these will be in the SNBI. Now down here we show all of the new SNBI items and the comparable old NBI item with those. So anything that shows an old NBI item will be translated from the old NBI data into the new, so that it'll be filled in wherever there's something that's equivalent. There's a bunch of geometry, bridge length, NBIS bridge length. Let me mention that one here. That one is something we never coded before. We only coded yes or no, whether it was NBIS bridge length. Now they want to know that length, and that length is just the opening under the bridge. So this measurement here is what they want. It identifies it as a bridge requiring an NBIS inspection. So it just shows you all these examples. Culvert, it shows you, pipes. If pipes are close enough together, they're considered a bridge as well. So that's the dimension that they want now in that item. And then the total bridge length is just the overall bridge length, like we would think of before, from back wall to back wall. So the culvert, they show the same as the bridge length, which I don't think is right, but and then the arches too, but so that's what that length is supposed to be there. And we have that structural length is already there. Maximum span length is something we always had in the past, but now they want minimum span length. So we'll have to put in a minimum span length. They don't want to know the span lengths of every span. They just want to know the maximum and minimum. So not sure why, but they do. Deck width, out to out and curb to curb, we always had that. Sidewalk widths, we've had that. Or no, that's new, and that's what we just entered. Approach roadway width, that's old. Most of these are all old information. Side Hill Bridge. Let me look at Side Hill Bridge. That one's interesting. Excuse me. I had to take a drink. I don't think we have any side hill bridges in Iowa, but if you do, this is what it is. It's a bridge. It's got one side of it built into the side of the hill. So we probably don't have any like that in Iowa, but just in case we do, they wanted to know about it. So irregular deck shape, calculated deck shape or deck area. Features, see all these features here are going to be, most of them are going to be populated from our current data. So those will all be already populated. These aren't lining up perfectly here because you have detour length and detour length. Crossing bridge number is a new one that if you have a bridge going over another bridge, they want to know what that other bridge number is. It doesn't matter whether it's above or below. They want to know, they know it. And they're going to try and have that auto-populated from our central database information. I don't know that locals have any of those. We have a few on the state system, but that's something new. I said about the railroad services routes. Again, a lot of this is going to be populated from old data here. If anything isn't populated, then that's something that you have to go in and update. Again, load ratings, a bunch of information there I'll talk about here in a minute. Line inspection types. And then down here, we just have all the different inspection types and the dates that have come forward from the front page. Condition ratings. You can see a lot of those are going to populate over from the old data. Approach stuff. So this just shows you what correlates to the old. That's all this page is really for. So this one won't be there forever. This one's just going to be there for a short time. Under records, you don't have too many bridges that go over other roadways, so you really don't have any under records to talk about. Our pictures are the same. Asset files, forms, adding forms, report sections. I'm going to talk about that in a second. This has really been a problem for even Bentley to figure out because of the many-to-one issues with some of the data. Creating these report pages just has not been figured out yet. So there really aren't any report pages here. Maybe the old SINA is an option here that you could keep in a report. But otherwise, these other ones are just really not set up yet. I don't know, Kevin, if you got anything to say about that.
I mean, well, they're set up. They're still a work in progress. A lot of them are set up. I've tried to pare them down so that they are printable, but focus mostly on making sure that that the input was set up correctly. So as Scott has said, he's made little changes here and there. I start to work on them and then he makes a change. And so I have not been able to get into them as perfectly. And as he said, so the problem is that the many to ones they're called repeating field groups. And for whatever reason, the repeating field groups cannot go on the output or the report section. So that's why you'll see something that says span and material type. That's essentially the table that you saw on the decks, super, and culvert page. And then the substructure would be the same thing on the substructure. And then, so if it doesn't have the dash on it, it's essentially an equating many to one table that is not able to be on a report. So I have pushed for it, but they have not accommodated that yet. And I would say that Iowa has pushed for it, and I do not think we're the only state that has pushed for it, but they're just not there yet. But so.
No, we're kind of leading the charge on some of this stuff. So
I guess I should say we could use their standard ones, but then the look and feel that you guys are accustomed to would be vastly different.
Right, because their reports just have the SNBI data on them. That doesn't have all of our additional information that we want. So Kevin's trying to make them so they're similar to what we had in the past, plus the new information. So this may not come any real soon, but Kevin's working on it as best he can. So we'll when it's done and they're ready to go, we'll put something out to let everybody know that they're available to use. You can use them as best you can now, but just to let you know, they're not 100% yet. So next inspection calculations, that's just a form that we put in there because the system wasn't able to calculate the next inspection properly. Like here it is, it's blank. It's supposed to pick the earliest date from all of these, but when there's blanks in there, it doesn't like that. So it's not been working. So that's why that's in here, and that won't be here forever either. It'll go away eventually. Supplemental information page. We changed this a little bit compared to what you used to see. We've made this just so the state page and our page and your page is basically the same thing. There's no difference in the two pages, but I have designated what things in here are really just for our use only, that you don't have to use. You could use them if you wanted to, but you don't have to use them. We've been asked to track bats on our bridges, so when we're doing projects, we know whether there's bats there that need to be accommodated. We always tracked our repairs in the past, year of repair, design number, type. We track that here in this table. We're just going to keep this for our own benefit for history, but moving forward, we'll add items down here under work events. We won't fill this in anymore. We'll keep what we had, but we'll add new down here in our part. So you don't have to do any of this up here. Just use the events down here for your own purposes. Man, that's ugly flashing. Let me try and turn some of that off maybe. I don't even know which ones are there. So that's what's on the supplemental page. We've got information up here about whether you needed traffic control and make some comments about it. Crew hours, how many hours did it take you to inspect the bridge? Did you need flaggers? Did you need a helper to do the inspection? Special equipment hours, snooper hours. Did you use a snooper? And then they also want, for border bridges, they want to know the neighboring state, and for several of the northern and southern counties, there are some border bridges, and we've just recently identified those, at least with Minnesota. So there are some up there on the northern tier of counties that will have to have this border bridge information entered in. You know, that they want the lead agency, say Minnesota's the lead, and then the border state is still Minnesota. But who's in charge of the inspection? Do you shared responsibility, no responsibility, full responsibility? So it might be Minnesota's the bordering state. There may be the lead agency, but maybe you're doing the inspections. I don't know. Then they want MPOs. That's a field that's going to come from our central database. They're working on putting that data in our central database. We never had that before, so that's something that's coming in the future and isn't really too big a deal. Evacuation, is it on an evacuation route? This is more for states that get hurricanes and earthquakes, you know, that need evacuation routes. So in Iowa, we don't really have any evacuation routes. You know, if you happen to have one for a city or something, that would be okay to put yes in there. Not a big deal. There's our Side Hill Bridge information again. So that's what's on the supplemental information page. Few things here that are new that everybody will have to look at. But you know, if your bridge isn't a border bridge, then you don't have to put any information in there. That can be left blank. So, all right, I got just a few minutes left for the load rating report and the changes in load rating.
Do we want to go through some questions before we
Yeah,
get to that?
do you have some questions? Go ahead.
So this was probably before we started the SI&A section, but and I don't know exactly the question per se, but it says a series of CMP abutments and piers.
Series of CMP abutments and piers. Yeah, I'm not sure what they're asking there either.
So I just wanted to, I didn't know if it would mean something more to you than it does to me. So
yeah. Okay, I see. I know what they're saying. They're saying if you've got like 3 CMPs and they measure more than 20 feet, so they're considered a bridge. Let me go back to. I'll just go to. I'll go to culvert here, and let's see. Main material type. I don't think they necessarily have CMP here. They do have, it'd just be an other, I think. Unless somebody sees something else, but I hope you don't have plastic pipes that are a bridge. That's not a good thing. You know, if you have concrete pipes, maybe you say concrete other, steel other, you know, for CMP, maybe steel other is the thing to go to. What else do they have here for? They don't really have girders. Here's pipes, rigid pipes, flexible pipes. So they do have pipes in here as a structure type. No deck interaction. There's really no deck, so it's just say non-composite for a pipe, I guess. Material. If it's a concrete pipe, it's precast pipe. If it's steel, there's corrugated steel. So for substructure, what do they have here? They just have pier and abutment. Boy, I'd almost think you could just say none and not enter anything for substructure if it's pipes. See, that's one of those questions that we need to ask Federal Highway when they give us a training. But to me, substructure for a pipe, you don't have any. You only have a superstructure. So I just leave those blank until Federal Highway says that's wrong. And then they'll have to tell us what to put in for pipes. So. Okay.
there might be a clarification. It says talking about
Okay.
corrugated steel pipe bridges, steel reverted. I don't know if that's what you were talking about, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically, yes.
Okay, the next question is, do you have guidance for LRS route ID and LRS mile point?
Yeah, that I'm hoping that for my bridges, that all comes through our central database. So I think that's all going to be in our central database and will be populated for you. You won't have to worry about that. Will be a pre-populated fields for both of those, because we take care of the LRS system here at the DOT for all routes. All routes have that, so I don't see any worry there with anything. So,
And then the question about a field form for taking out to the site.
see, that's the thing. We really don't have that. Like I said, we don't have the SINA that you can just print out what you need in the field. That's just a really tough one to determine. I have ideas on what I'd like to be on an SINA that you could take out into the field, but making that fit even on 2 pages is not very easy. So we're working on something, but we just don't have anything at this point that you could take out easily into the field. You know, you can look at the forms and you know, you could at least take out the old SINA form for now, because that's still legitimate to enter. And then when you come back, you can populate the other deck super and sub pages with whatever the ratings are that you marked down on the old SINA. It's still the same. So I'm hesitate to click on one of these because I don't know if it'll open or not. It may take
It should
forever to
open.
open.
If you, I would maybe start with the SINA, but I bet you if you look at the deck, it should work fine.
The deck LPA one.
Yep.
Okay, there, yeah, it does. It opens up. So you can print the individual forms that way to take out into the field.
Yeah, so you can see that some of the text we're trying to get it to work out, but
yeah. So yeah, you could just click these before you go out into the field, and then just hit view PDF, and that would create the PDF of all of these that you have checked, and then take that out into the field with you as your printout. And then before you finalize your report, you know, you can come in and just check all of them that you want to include in your report then. So. All right. Anything else?
nope, those were the last of them.
Okay. Load rating page. You know, we got some items here that are still, yeah, some of these, like the width and the length, those are SNBI items. I don't know, Kevin, if you can put the SNBI numbers in those too. So their year built, bridge ID, all of those have SNBI values that we could put in there, but those are all going to be populated from the other data. Number of spans and total number of spans. Are something that I'm not sure. When you have main spans that have 2 spans and approach spans, 2 spans, this value, I don't know, it's not going to be the sum of those. It's just going to be one or the other. So maybe it'll be number of main spans here. And then total spans is something that you'd input manually, I believe. Isn't that right, Kevin? The total spans. It's not editable right now, but I would think that would be.
Yeah, I mean,
how you
maybe
do that.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to be another form where in the past it was a single entry and they now fall under that many to one. So
yep.
We do the best I can. A lot of these may be single, you know, you're going to have to enter them by hand.
Yep.
So,
design load type, enter that in. There's only one rating method to choose. You don't have to choose a rating method for operating an inventory separately. It's just one. You still have to put in a number of lanes on the structure. The inventory and operating ratings, when we submit them to Federal Highway, they are asking for the rating factor now and not the tonnages. So I think we're going to have to modify something here because we've got a lot of bridges that have tonnages for that value right now. And I think we're going to have Bentley help us come up with a way to convert those to rating factors when the submittal happens. And then keep the ones that are actually rating factors. And I think, I don't know, Kevin, it depends on what they choose here, because this is a rating factor method. So this, I guess we could leave this, say tons or rating factor, because it depends on what was chosen here, whether it's a tonnage or rating factor. And the submittal, we'll just have to know which one it is based on this, and then convert it to a rating factor when it's needed to be converted. So all this will populate from before. This will all be filled in from what was in there before. So
yeah, I have. I mean, if it's something that's being done by that was an SNBI, I would assume that there are fields that are converting in whatever way they need to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very few have we created anything special. The only one that we've done was related to the inspection info, where we added the a scheduling aspect for everyone.
Right.
There's so
okay. For load ratings, Federal Highway now, they want to know the ratings for every legal truck. The ones in yellow here are all the ones that they want included in the submittal, and then the other ones are just our trucks that we've been rating for years. So unfortunately, a lot of theirs, this Type 3 and the 3S2, we never actually rated for those because they're enveloped by our other trucks. So I'm not going to, at least now, I'm not going to tell you have to go in and put a rating in for those trucks that we never rated for in the past. So don't put anything in for 3, but for 4, whatever was in there for 4 before will be brought forward. And the, excuse me, let's see, it should calculated the rating factor for us here. And this is the value that Federal Highway wants. That's why it says BEP 02 there, because it's the rating factor they want, not the tonnage. But we'll just continue to enter tonnages and let it calculate the rating factor. And then it wants to know if the bridge is posted, what type of posting does it have? Is it gross weight, single axle load, tandem, truckload? So basically we're going to use, we use gross weight, a single tonnage for everything. We use truckload, which is the silhouettes. Each truck has its own load. We don't use speed reductions very often. Number of lanes, we do use that, if the bridge is restricted to 1 lane only or something like that, we might use that. So, but the truckload and gross load are going to be the typical ones. And then you have to put in what the posting value is. So are we posting it at 24 tons for that truck? And if we're saying, say that truck is 35 tons, we're still going to post at a gross limit, and maybe the gross limit is still going to be 24. We're just putting one sign out there that says 24 for everything. So that's how you would code those. Emergency vehicles, we've still got our requirement out there for emergency vehicles. If you don't have to rate it for the emergency vehicle, you can leave that blank. This notional load, that's we never rated for that, and I don't see any reason to rate for that. So leave the notional load blank. We may eventually take it off of here, but it still needs to be submitted with our annual submittal. So we'll see how Federal Highway, how much they cry about that one. Then we have implements of husbandry. That's just our own, and we still don't really have any good guidance on that yet. AASHTO has put out some guidance, but I really don't. It doesn't fit Iowa, so we still are kind of up in the air on implements of husbandry. Posting status, this is new. This is where instead of putting in P for posted, B for needs posting, A for open to traffic, they've made it a lot more complicated now than what it was. So if your bridge has a sign, a permanent sign, it's going to be posted, you know, forever. You put P. If there's just some temporary restriction, you put T. If the bridge has been supported to maintain the legal loads, you have to put supported, some temporary supports. So it's permanently posted for whatever. It's permanently posted with no restriction. That is a bridge that doesn't require posting. It's nothing. So it's permanent, no restriction. Kind of bizarre. That's the equivalent to A, open to traffic. But it may have a permanent posting. Is it a weight restriction? Is it needs reduction? That's our B. It has a posting sign, but now that posting needs to be changed and it needs to be reduced, or the posting sign is missing, or the status is permanently posted for weight. So if your sign is in place, it's still good. It's PP is the option to choose there. If it's posted and needs reduction, you choose that. If it's permanent and closed, you put that, and then I don't think there's, then you just put closed. So permanent, no restriction, then this one would be permanently open. So instead of one nice, easy, simple letter, now we've got these three different things we've got to choose from. And because it's many to one, they want to know, excuse me, every time it changes. So say we have no posting here on today. Well, let me pick a different day. Let me pick an earlier to say no posting on the 1st of this month, but now all of a sudden we need to post it, and it needs reduction, I guess is what you call if it needs posting. It needs reduction, and now we have to track that today we determined that it needs reduction. And then when you actually get it posted, you got to come in and do another one, permanently posted, posted for weight, and we put the sign in, say this name, I'll change this one. So it wasn't posted on the 1st. All of a sudden on the 5th, we decided, oh, it does need posting. And then on the 20th, we put in the posting signs. So they wanted us to track all this posting stuff. They're extremely anal about posting. They've always just harangued us terrible about postings, and especially when we got one that says needs reduction. When we used to have, when we use a B for posting, man, they just harped on us like crazy about those to get it done. And now they're making it even harder on us to do this. So there's just no way to get around it. So this is one of those things that you can use the data update report for to come in and update this information when it changes. When you have something that needs posting but isn't, and then once it gets posted, do a data update report, come into the load rating and change it and update it. So A lot of hoops to jump through now from what we had before. Permits. This is different than the all systems permit. This is for annual permit loads, routine permits. We call them annual permits in Iowa. So there's different codes that you need to enter. Carries permit loads, no problem. Is adequate for some, but restricted for others, and then does not carry permit loads, bridge does not carry routine permit loads. To me, if you've got bridges out on gravel roads, especially level B roads, that's never going to carry a routine permit load. So you could put N there for that. And then all of these are the routine permit loads down here. You put in no. We've got a crane that we look at for state, but all of these would be no for your annual permit, even though the bridge never sees it, never sees them. You can still put no in here, but you wouldn't have to necessarily rate for these if you know it's never going to see permit loads. You wouldn't have to rate for this 90, 136, and 156. You could still put no in there, but you wouldn't have to rate for them. And then the all systems permit, we still have that in there as well. So I'm right at my 12 o'clock limit. I think I've got through everything. Everything else, structure of the load rating evaluation, that stays the same. That's no change. Critical finding form is the same. There's no change there. It's all the same. So anything that doesn't say SNBI on it did not change, and it's just the same as it was before. So just to wrap up, inspection dates, absolutely critical. Fill in both of the inspection info pages with inspection dates. Make sure you go to the old SINA form and update all of the ratings in here so they match whatever's in the rest of the bridge for deck, super, and sub. That's the two main things. If you learned anything today, that's the things that I want you to know, is the inspection dates and the ratings. You have to enter those twice, at least for this year. And then after next year, this old SINA and then the old inspection info page will go away, and we won't need those anymore. So any final questions?
Yeah, we have a few, Scott. I think this is going to be more for me, but I'll let you comment on it.
Okay.
Any way you can post each form with highlighted cells showing which cells need to be populated on the new SNBI forms. This would not include all cells populated from SIMS. All cells not highlighted would be optional. Thanks.
Let me take this first.
Sure.
I don't think you need to highlight them. The ones that have the SNBI codes have to be entered. All these other ones, if you had data in them before, it's going to populate from what you had before. So there are only a few that you wouldn't have to populate, like this irregular deck area, you wouldn't have to populate that, but making it a different color, I don't know that really helps too much. What was my other thought here? We've got this SNBI form that has everything on it. That's, you can scroll through that and see if there's anything blank and just figure out, do I have to have that or not? That's not really that complicated. I want to show, let me get out of this one, the report that has the 38 items, this 38 item report. This doesn't like that I want to do two at the same time, but this one actually has the 38 items shown with a box around them. Those are the items that you can populate before an inspection.
That
some
don't carry
LEDs
over
here
from a previous one.
that don't carry over from anything else. You can see, yeah, the substructure, see all of them need to be entered. Just some of the super and deck need to be entered there. If that's kind of what you were looking for, we have that in this 38 item report.
I think that, Scott, I think maybe there's two parts to the question. One, no, we cannot. It's a feature that I've asked for, but it is not something that I can do on the input. I can do something on the output, but that would end up taking more steps because you'd have to go to the output to look at it and then determine that. I think what they're highlighting, Scott, is that some things don't need to be input right now, and ultimately everything does. I think that's maybe the
right. Yeah, like I said, it does not all have to be entered now because we're not submitting this data until 26 at the earliest. But it would have to be populated by our 28 submittal. But I just don't think leaving things blank and just thinking, oh, I'll get to it later. I don't think that's a good idea. I think you really should populate as much as you can right off the bat. And that way too, if you've entered something and then you go back, well, that's not really what I want it to be, you can change it without any big deal. Don't try and make it too easy on yourself early because it's going to bite you in the butt later.
Right. But we're not telling you exactly how to do it. I mean, as we said, in 2025, we are submitting NBI data. So that's what we have to have. After that, we need to start submitting the SNBI data. When you start doing it, I don't know that we can tell you to do. We are just giving you the tools to do it.
Yeah.
I know Scott's going to encourage you to do it, but I mean, I think then when it comes down to it,
yeah.
As he said, the ratings and the dates, those need to be done now. So that way, you know when your next inspections are done.
Yeah. So. For scheduling inspections, the dates really are important. Very important. Because your next inspection is going to be scheduled based on the SNBI data, not the old NBI data. So
right. We just need the NBI 90 date for the 2025 submittal.
Yep. So. And you don't want bridges to look like they're late in the 25 submittal either. So that's why it's so important.
We have a couple questions on the load rating, and I don't know if this is, what if you use different rating methods for operating and inventory, i.e. some steel I-beams with timber deck have the timber deck control the operating and the beam control in the inventory. The steel I-beam would be the load factor 1 and the timber deck would be allowable stress 2.
Yep. It just depends on which one controls. If your timber deck is controlling, then you can say allowable stress. If it's the steel girders, you can say load factor. But you can say load factor and still have the timber deck control using allowable stress. So it's really not wrong either way. But if the timber deck is controlling, yeah, I'd put allowable stress in as the method. So, and if for some strange reason the steel girders control inventory and the deck controls operating, I don't think it matters either way which one you put in there. I think the inventory one is the one that the Federal Highway looks at more than operating. So whatever's controlling inventory, use that as your default method. I don't know why they change it to just one. See, they don't understand any of this stuff in Washington. They do things without asking, what's really going on out in the field. So, so hopefully that answers your question. What else we got?
Next question is, how do we enter for a bridge that is 2-lane due to width, but we are giving them the option to either post for a truckload or a 1-lane? Before we would enter numbers for both 1 and 2-lane, but now there's only one option.
Let's go back. Let's find it.
So I assume that's the question between a 1-lane and a multi-lane.
The lanes on the bridge doesn't affect your rating. They just want to know, is the bridge wide enough to carry 2 lanes or not? If you rate it for 1 lane, that's up to you, because let's see, because number of lanes restricted is an option here. If you're not posting it for a weight limit, you just say, okay, I'm restricting it for the number of lanes. You don't have to tell them you've restricted it to 1 lane. You don't have to tell them, it's actually a 4-lane bridge, but we're restricting it to 2 lanes. We just don't have to. You don't have to worry about that anymore. And if your tonnage here is based on 1 lane analysis, that's fine. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Because here you're going to have to say lanes restricted, plus maybe you've put a weight limit on it as well. So you can do both. Hopefully that answers your question there. I didn't want to have a multi and single lane option here anymore for limits. We're going to have to think about, when we pull these numbers over from the old tables, how to pull them over and pull the right one over. That's going to be an issue, and they may have to do some manual review of these to make sure they're the right values from previously. But going forward, I just didn't see any reason to have a multi and single lane option when they have these options now for posting.
I mean, that may be something we have to talk about, Scott, because it was
Yeah,
not
definitely.
previously
Right.
in there. So the table's only going to pull over things that was in the Fed tape, and that would not have
Right.
been so.
Right. Exactly.
That ties into the next question: is how will the new
Mhm.
system transfer the old data? So how would the new system transfer old data from load certs that are certified with both 1 and 2 lanes? I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about here. Yep.
Yeah. So I
Not
don't
sure
know
how
that
we're
we
going to
know
do
that
that yet.
answer.
That may be, we can do the best we can. Most bridges just have the multi-lane numbers and don't have single lane. So most everything will come through pretty good, but those ones that have single lane, those are going to be ones we'll have to figure out how to do those. It may be that you have to go through those manually and fix them, but we'll see. We'll see what we can do.
I mean, with that, I mean, we're doing the best we can. I mean, this wasn't ours, and we're doing our best to help you. Like, we did automated the load rating factor for you, me and Scott. So so that's one less step you'll have to do. So
yeah.
The next question is, will all of our queries have to be changed? I mean, I think in the long term, the answer is yes.
Yep.
I mean, I would reference the SNBI comparison. And then you could just go in and select the equivalent, because most of the time there's going to be an equivalent new ID. So you just have to click the new ID. So
nope, most of your queries are going to not work anymore. So yeah, Federal Highways they just don't understand programming and how things work and how people have to deal with all this. They just think, oh, this create a spreadsheet and then keep track of it in a spreadsheet. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. So yeah, and then they give us a short time frame to implement all this and get all of our programs rewritten and everything. So yeah, the people who did this, they're lucky I can't just drive across town and talk to them, because they would get an earful. So, all right, next question.
The next question, and I don't know if we can necessarily, at this point, is there any intelligence built in to the new coding to prevent or flag impossible or contradicting entries, or possibly down the road? I don't know exactly what that is referencing. I mean, I know that Bentley is working on, a new SNBI error checker. I asked about that recently, and it's not necessarily out there, ready to go. So, I mean, you will still have the SNBI error checker, attached, as that is what the feds are looking at. So the answer is kind of yes and no.
Yeah, I think Air Checker will catch as much as it can. So, and data form, we format the data field so you can't enter, letters where it's only numbers. So that type of thing is taken care of. So.
Maybe this is a clarification on one of the previous. Some items, Scott, made it sound like it was optional. I do want to fill out the cells if they are not going to be required.
It's only optional now because we're not submitting it to Federal Highway. In the future, all these NBI items will have to be filled out unless in a coding guide it says you can leave it blank because of X, Y, or Z. That's the only time you can leave them blank is when the coding guide says you can because it's not needed. But almost all of them are needed at some point in time. I'm just saying they're optional for this first inspection that you do right now, but by December 31st, 2027, they all have to be filled out.
Right. So the only things that I would say that we are requiring now are making sure that you have your condition ratings in SNBI so you can make sure that the dates will determine your next inspection. Having the dates and your ratings in there will tell you whether or not you're going to be on it, like if you have to go to a 12-month inspection. Yep. Or underwater if you have to go to less. It's or to track when your 24-month inspection would be due.
Right. Yeah.
Other than that, it's all NBI for the
we had to implement the new requirements for inspection intervals for the 12-month and 48-month frequencies. We had to implement that actually this year, this spring. So it had to go into effect this spring. So we had to do that. So that's why it's so important to get your ratings in there right and your dates in there right. So those things are calculated properly. That's my main point today. Any other questions? Go a few more minutes and I'm gonna have to call her quits, I think.
Sure. I only have 2 more. Any funding available for cities and counties to do the extra work?
Well, it depends on who you ask. There's no extra money, but the Federal Highway will say, oh, you can use the federal funds you already get to pay for doing some of this stuff. But nobody would ever really do that. You want to use it for projects. You don't want to use it for this. But no, there is no extra money. Totally unfunded mandate, like always. No help whatsoever. They just give us more stuff they can beat us over the head with, is all it is.
And then the last question, the 38 item form and the description of the items labeled SNBI are not what I was looking for being highlighted. Thanks.
Yeah, I think Kevin kind of answered the question that you were asking before. And I think I did too just now. There aren't any things that don't have to be entered unless the coding guide tells you they don't. And that's not very many. Most everything has to be entered at some point in time. There is nothing that you can just say, I don't need to fill that out. So
it's just like currently there are going to be certain things that you don't fill out because it just doesn't apply to the bridge that you have.
Yeah,
so those would be
irregular deck area. The irregular deck area, you don't have to fill that out if you don't have an irregular deck area. But that's one of the few. I think there's less than a handful of them that can be just left blank. Yeah.
If you have a side hill bridge, we don't have any of those. I mean,
no.
So there are going to be some that.
Well, you still need to put yes or no whether it's a side hill bridge. You still have to fill it out. It's not.
Okay.
It's not optional to leave blank. No.
Okay.
So
right. Well. But
there's a lot of them that are a one-time entry. You enter them once and you never have to think about them again. And there's about 34, something like that, of items that could change during an inspection that you'll have to review. And then the rest of them will just stay the same. Like all that super and substructure input stuff, you know, that's just a one-time entry. You put that in once and you won't have to think about it again. So.
Yeah. So yeah, there are some things like I said, you know, in 2025 submittal, not everything on the SNBI table is going to be required. But by 2027 it will be.
Yeah.
So the idea is that we wanted to give you the tools to start thinking how to plan this, as you know, within your organizations, on how you need to get to 2027. And the push is that we wanted to have it now is because some of these will be on 48 months, or you may have some on 48 months that are going to be coming due. And we did not want you to miss those ones that may not pop up then again until like 2029.
Yeah.
And then we would be dinged for not catching those in advance.
So, yeah, I'm just trying to let you have an opportunity to learn it, to make mistakes and give us time to fix mistakes. Things in Sims that maybe aren't working right that we can fix. You know, we can reorganize these pages a little bit too as we need to move things around. I just want to give ourselves the time to learn it and get comfortable with it. If we waited till January of 26 to start doing this and everybody had to scramble and get it all done, every bridge had to be completely done and ready to go by the end of 27. You know, that would be difficult. So I'm just trying to give us the breathing room we need to get it to work the best we can. So that's why everything isn't necessarily work. I didn't want to wait till we had a perfect system. You know, if we wait for a perfect system, you know, we'd never get there. So.
And it would also mean that we have to fix our system as you're fixing your stuff, and that's never a good solution. Is that you guys are finding things that are incorrect in our system, and we all have to be correct.
Yeah.
Right now, we don't have to be 100% correct. So you guys can help. You know, I don't want to say this is like we did our best to get there, but as engineers, we know that everybody's going to catch something because it's important to that one person, and that they're going to say, well, why couldn't we do this better? And we want to give you guys the opportunity to let us know what we could be doing better. You guys use these forms more than we do. So we tried our best to make them user friendly for you by keeping them in the same format that you were used to. I mean, we could have totally changed the system and just used what Bentley rolled out. I think that would have been more problematic. So we've worked really hard to keep the look and feel the same for you guys.
Yep. All right. Well, I
don't think there's any more questions, Scott.
Okay. I probably blew through this pretty fast, but I appreciate you hanging in there. And like I said, this recording will be out there for you to look back on and revisit if you need to. So with that, thanks for everybody's participation. Thanks for the questions, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.